Big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Burgos a man, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the carry.
Welcome back to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins. No Hebrew Hammer today. He is on the injured list for today with flu-like symptoms and no voice. Can't really do a podcast with no voice. Called in the lefty out of the pen. Actually, he might be a righty. I don't know if he's a lefty or righty. Doesn't matter. It's our great friend, David Pfaff. David, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks. Super excited to fill in for Bernie. Loved my first time on the podcast, so wanted to jump into action, and help you guys out. So we're going to have a great show today. Super excited for our guest. As we kind of go on the tour of the Wisconsin football coaches now. So super excited to have our guest today. So.
Yes, we've got outside linebackers and special teams coach Matt Mitchell. Coach Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Bernie's super bummed about missing this one because I think every episode last year in the last season, he complained that they didn't have a special teams coach and the Badgers didn't have a special teams coach. And the units, let's face it, the Badger special teams unit weren't the best this past year. We'll get into that in a little bit. But before we get started, want to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag, where they continue to be your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over there at betonline.ag. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit using our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. But we want to get to know you first, Coach, because I like to do my research on this. You were college roommates with Coach Tressel?
Yeah, it's been a relationship that spanned over 30 years. We both played small Division III football in the state of Iowa and started a relationship there. And then after college, we both branched out, professionally and kind of headed in different directions. I think probably the relationship continued to strengthen. I was the head football coach at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was over at Michigan State with Mark D'Antonio and the crew over there. So that was only about an hour and a half drive. And so, I think there was really an opportunity for us to, not only spend a lot of time personally, but a lot of professional time. I'd go over there. They were very open at Michigan State. There was a lot of times where professional development, I spent time with Mike too. And so, just kind of how things work. I actually talked to my position group the other day about, college football, lifelong friendships. And that's definitely one of those things that came into play. And obviously, there's a professional aspect to our relationship too, which we both respect those boundaries and understand that. But I've known him for 30 years and it's been a great relationship.
Okay. So what was your first impression of him when you first met him?
Well, he was a two-sport athlete actually at the place we went to. So he was an All-American wrestler.
At Cornell College, right?
Yeah, Cornell College. So when we got there, he was coming from the Twin Cities. I grew up on a farm in the state of Colorado, so we had some different backgrounds a little bit. But I think more than anything, just kind of bonded over the athletic things, and also he was a really good student. Academics mattered to me, and so we both had similar interests in terms of trying to have that balance of being great students and athletes. And so. You find that those guys, try to gravitate towards people who are like you in regards to their interests and their disciplines. And that was somebody that, was able to do that with.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that's so cool that you guys still have this relationship. I mean, Pfaff, I know that you've been out for a couple of years now, but I know that those relationships that you established as a Badger are still that's your job now also, and B, are a driving factor in with the people that you spend time with.
Yeah. I mean, so my girlfriend and I were actually able to go to the Badgers practice last weekend. Great weather. And she kind of, we're walking through and I'm seeing everybody, and it's a generational thing, right? So I'm talking to players that, are way older than me, and some are still on the team. And we're kind of walking through and she goes, man, you're like, these are like your war buddies. And I'm like, yeah, it is, it's a great way to bond with folks, over, just athletics and you're kind of doing this thing. You're trying to figure out college at the same time. And football, right? It's kind of that small community, no matter how big the actual community is. So.
Yeah, I know. That's, I mean, I think that's absolutely fascinating that you guys sort of took these two paths and now have been able to reconnect. And you were at Grand Valley State for a long, long time, extraordinarily successful there. I mean, you were there, what, 19 seasons? The last, what, 13? I think you were the head coach, if I'm not correct. That is a huge, and that's a huge jump to go from Division II to FBS football. So my first question is just what inspired you to finally make that jump? What made you think that this is the right time to do that?
Yeah, no, you're accurate. I was the defensive coordinator there, and I was an assistant for 6 years, and then I was the head coach for 13 seasons. And there have been a few professional opportunities that come my way, but wasn't really necessarily the right fit. And I felt that this opportunity, when it was presented by Coach Fickle, was a great fit. On a lot of different levels. I think, first of all, Wisconsin football from the outside, I've not been a part of it, but I had a tremendous amount of respect for the tradition, the history within this program. 21 straight winning seasons, a lot of things that have occurred. It's been really consistently good over the course of time. So I saw that. I feel like Madison, Wisconsin is an awesome town. I visited here once, and I felt like it'd be a great place to raise a family. And you could definitely tell from the outside, not a part of it, but the entire state of Wisconsin, and everybody really loves the Badgers. There's a lot of state support and community support, which I very much valued. It was kind of the college football show here in the state. And then the last piece was Coach Fickle and the staff that that knew him a little bit. I hadn't really ever worked with him, but really felt strongly that this place had a lot of success, but he was going to be able to come in here and just kind of take that a little bit higher and just elevate it, and felt that this was going to be an awesome fit. And professionally for me, it was also time, just to be transparent, 13 years as a head coach. There's a lot that goes into that. And I was looking for a little bit of a change professionally and just, trying a little different focus. You're but you're in charge of 120 players and, strength staff and assistant coaches, and you have a big picture view. Very much wanted the opportunity to, get my focus a little bit more narrow and be around some excellent football coaches on both sides of the ball, because I, knew they were hiring some great coaches on offense too. And I felt like that would be time for me to grow. And again, to be honest and transparent, could have probably stayed there and just ridden it out and had a comfortable existence. But I think a lot of times as coaches, we push our players to have a growth mindset, to push themselves in uncomfortable situations, to try to improve themselves and grow and be the best they can be. And so, you say that, and then when you have an opportunity to deny it, that would not really be living the message that you're preaching. And so I felt like this was for me something to do. And I have a wife and 2 kids, and they've been laid a lot of sacrifices. I think them having to be a part of Wisconsin game days and around this program too can have a lot of residual benefits from my family.
Sure. So I actually had the pleasure of going to the WFCA conference a couple weeks ago, and had the pleasure of talking and listening to Coach Tressel and Coach Scruggs and a couple other individuals. And I don't think we actually met there, but my question, just learning kind of a little bit about their brand of football, and you coming in now to this. And special teams being, very important. It's 1/3 of the game, that you can always tell when someone's a real football mind when they always drop that, because it's so important. What's going to be your brand for special teams? What's going to be the not the secret sauce, but the sauce? Like what are we going to be known for?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people talk about culture. We're working to establish a culture on special teams. It's got to fall in line with the overall team culture. A lot of people use the term culture, but really define it. We talk about it as shared beliefs, shared behaviors. And so I think special teams, from the first thing, I think can have a big impact on the program, because a lot of times, sometimes in college football, you can have divisions between offense and defense. I mean, it's just pretty natural, just between position meetings and the competition. And so I think special teams is an opportunity. We've been using the word synergy to try to create, an understanding that we have offensive, defensive players working together on those units. I think it can help your overall team culture, just in regards to this being a team and not 2 separate units. So that, we always try to frame special teams that the 2 coverage units, kickoff and punt, they're the first snap of a defensive series. The 2 return units are the first snap of an offensive series. So really they're not independent operators. They're not their own things. They're an extension of our defense and offense. And so if you're a defensive player, you should be very much invested in how our two coverages are performing and vice versa offensively. And what we're trying to do is really, we have three things we think can impact the game. I think first thing is obviously field position. We have standards that we want to do to try to create field position. Next thing is try to limit explosives and create explosives, and then try to find the snaps that are game changers. And, to be transparent, when you looked at last year going through all the cut-ups, there's weren't really many game-changing plays on special teams, whether that's a punt return, a kick return. We had one in the bowl game against Oklahoma State, a long return, but there wasn't necessarily a thing that could spark or change a game. Now, at the same time, I want to be transparent. We're not reaching for those. We're not going to try to do things out of character to give things up. But I think if you stick with the process and you find great players and put them in position, those game changers can occur. And I think the other thing that's unique here is this is not a one-man show. Luke Fickell is very much involved in the special teams. And, Colin Hitchler, our safeties coach too, is working with us. So there's three of us that are all involved with it. And a lot of the other coaches are super intense in regards to individual drills and the things that we're trying to do with that. And I know one thing that, Luke Fickell, there will be starters playing on special teams. There will be starters. Braylon Allen right now is doing some stuff on the front line of our punt team. And he's doing some things in drill work. So it's not like, you have an all Big Ten back that just sitting on the sidelines watching special teams. And I think Braylon is setting a great standard for us right now by attacking the drill work and special teams. That sends a residual message to everybody in the program that, these are important and nobody is not going to be doing them. Like, we're all going to be heavily involved in it. So we have a brand that's internal. We have a culture. We have a graphic. We have some music. We have some things that, this that kind of, we flip switches from one meeting to the next, and we have some cues that flip those switches. So some of those audio, visual, some are actions. And so we're building that to try to create that. And so, yeah, it's been good, I think up to this point, and we're really stressing that. In fact, one of the practices we're going to do after the launch on April 22nd is going to be really a special teams, focus, an entire practice where we're just really working on those teams and try to put on tape. And really for us right now as coaches, we're evaluating individuals. We're trying to see who are the individuals that can fit in those pieces and help us out.
That's great. That's great. You touched on, Braylon Allen, even doing some great things on special teams. What has been kind of the approach because I know special teams is a really great transition for getting guys to, hopefully make that bus, right? To contribute something special. What has that process been with spring ball? Have you been able to, kind of recruit see the guys that you want to see and kind of bring them in to the special teams meetings? Or how has it looked, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, so obviously, like, besides O-line, D-line, the quarterbacks, everybody's in the special teams meetings. And, one of the big things we talk about how the impact that you can have on we talk about impact on our program. We talk about impact on a game, and we also talk about impact on your career. Clearly, we try to draw some parallels, and I have a lot of slide decks where I show guys that maybe were undrafted free agents that had multiple year careers. And a lot of it was because they made, special teams was one of the things that made them mark on. But not looking too far ahead, what we're really trying to talk about, especially with some of our younger players, David, is the fact that if you can put a product on tape, you can earn trust from your coaches and the players. And so we're talking about earning trust. Like, across the board, everybody here's got to earn the right to play. You got to earn the opportunity to get out there on that field offensively, defensively. But to your point, I think there's some opportunity that maybe if you're you're in the two deep, but you're the last safety, that you might have an opportunity to put a product on tape that starts to, get the coaches saying, hey, this guy's doing good stuff. His teammates see it. Maybe that provides and gets you a window of more opportunities to play within the rotation on defense. So we've definitely illuminated that. And, we're finding that balance and making sure starters understand this is important, but also pushing the younger guys too, to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to potentially get out there and start to build some trust.
I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but do you have a favorite special teams unit?
Do you have a favorite special teams?
Yeah, I know you're not supposed to have favorites, and I know you're you probably. But do you have a favorite? Like, do you have one that's like most like that you think is most fun to coach, or just most fun for you to watch?
Yeah, well, I think you can tell a lot about a team on how they cover kickoffs, and I know there's there's touchbacks and things like that, but really we talk about the strain, the arm violence, the way in which you run down the field. We're here. We don't run around blocks. We run through people. And so that has to be a mindset in terms of how we take those things on, especially in the back end. And even if it's a touchback, I think that violence, that arm strain, the way that you cover, the way you take on blocks, I think it could be an indication of the type of football program that you have. When you pop on special teams tape, and you can kind of take a look at big picture. A, do they value that within a program? But B, you can try to get a sense of like the type of athletes and their intent on those things. So I would say that probably is one that, to be honest with you, like from a scheme standpoint, there's a couple things you can do on kickoff, but really it's about the players and the strain and the violence and them wanting to get after it. And I think that's a unit that, you can find 10 guys plus the kicker, but if you find 10 guys who want to run down with that violence and things to set the tone, I think that can really start a game and start a half, not diminishing the return units, but man, if you can get down there and get that going and get that defensive series started right, I think that just sets a physicality and a tone for the entire game.
Yeah, especially if you can stop them inside their own 20, right? Get them at the 15, get them at the 12 or whatever.
Have them gets back to that field position thing, 100%. Just a high correlation to average starting field position and points per drive. There's such a high correlation. We got to flip fields with the punt team and the kickoff team.
Believe in Badgers is excited to be brought to you by Infinigods. Infinigods is a gaming studio with a suite of free, fun-to-play games centered around ancient mythologies and civilizations. Visit Infinigods.com to play their first game, Infinimerge, and learn about their upcoming tower defense game. Play for fun or play to compete and take your shot at winning digital collectibles. That's Infinigods at Infinigods.com, unleashing the power of blockchain games. All right, well, as much as we all love talking about special teams, you are also the coach of what has effectively become the glamour position for the Wisconsin defense over the past decade, and that's outside linebackers. I mean, Pfaff, you played with some of the best. We've seen, Nick Herbig, TJ Watt, Andrew Van
Gilbert,
everybody.
Vaughn.
We can go on and on. But you're coaching what is, like we said, the glamour position on the Wisconsin defense, or has been. What does that mean to you to take over this group? Do you feel sort of a pressure to continue that legacy? And what excites you about the group that you're taking over?
I certainly have a ton of respect for that position. I just walk in the outside linebacker room and all those names you see are on the wall. And that was pretty cool too. TJ Watt came back into town and spent a morning with the outside linebackers and had a chance to meet him, just sitting there. And I was just a sponge listening to some of his experiences too. And so I think that's pretty cool about, Wisconsin football too. I want to say before I get going too much on the outside linebackers is that a lot of new coaches, different coaching staff, but the current players and a lot of former players have been very open. They've been really been great just in terms of the transition that's occurred with a lot of the head coach down to the assistant coaches. But no, I wouldn't use the word pressure. I think that I have high expectations for that room. Those expectations are driven by the tradition, the history of this place. I think those expectations are also internally driven for us to try to be the best that we can be. So I don't call it pressure. I just call it expectations. And I was, fortunate to walk into a room where we have a guy like CJ Getz, who's played a lot of football last year and was a productive player. And so you kind of lean on him. And then, we've got some newer faces, whether it's a transfer like Jeff Petrowski or guys that have played a little bit like Caden Johnson and Daryl Peterson in the past that we are attempting to try to, work to get them elevated. And TJ Bowlers has taken a lot of reps. And I could go through all the guys. I'm not going to do it, but a lot of guys are getting opportunities. I think we've had a few injuries at that position this spring too. There's been some guys that have missed multiple practices, and that happens. It's football, especially when we are very physical at our practices. We run inside drill every single day, and we don't back away from anything on O-line or D-line or outside linebackers. And so, those things happen. But I think the positive of that is provide a lot of opportunities for guys to get a lot of reps and put a product on tape that earns them the right to play. So there's work to be done. I would tell you that, heading into the depth chart is not established. I think we still have work to be doing. I don't know that we're at a championship level right now in regards to our performance. And I'm motivated to get that there. And I think the players are motivated to get that there too. And that's a process we're going through that right now. We're right in the middle of spring ball. People don't feel great, but we're pushing through that to try to put a product on tape.
Yeah, I think that is. I like what you say about expectation, not and not pressure, right? And so one of the questions that I want to ask you is, how is the position different from the 3-4 that they've run for the past decade? What are the most similar things about the way that you guys are utilizing outside linebackers, and what is the biggest transition?
Yeah. So I think, we definitely came in and, we wanted to try to, first of all, fit the scheme to the current players. And there was some returning, like I said, with CJ and some guys, like there's some returning experience at that position. So a lot of respect for the previous staff, both Coach Leonard, Coach April for that position. So we definitely blended some of the things that those outside linebackers did well within the scheme. And then clearly there's some things that Coach Tressel and Coach Fickle believe in they brought with them from previous stops that we're trying to blend in some of those things. So I think, the thing about the outside linebackers is, I would argue, I'm being selfish, it requires the most different skill sets of probably any position on the team. We have to be able to set edges in the run game. We've got to be effective in pass rush. We drop into coverage for some zone coverages. We drop and cover tight ends and tailbacks man, and then we run pressures. Sometimes we run pressures inside and we run pressures off the edge. So really trying to find kind of that, 5-tool player that can do all of those things efficiently. That requires a lot of different skills. And our skill set is a very diverse skill set, and you have to spend a lot of time honing those different skills and ultimately trying to, at the end of spring, trying to put players in position where highlight some of the things that they're the best at. If we've got some guys that are elite pass rushers, then we need to try to find opportunities to get them to do that. And if they set great edges in the run game, try to put them to do that. But let's go through all the things. So it's a very diverse position. I think it had some diversity previously at Wisconsin. I think we've added to that. We've put a few more things on their plate. Especially with we're running a little bit of a 3-3 defense, and so that's a little bit new in terms of picking up where they fit into that and how they transition into that front and how we can jump back and forth and be multiple between a 3 down and also running what had been run here previously. And so we're spending time trying to hone those skills.
So can you, as a former player, not being too removed, I'm always curious about like how you guys conduct meetings and like what that internal, day-to-day operation type stuff it looks like for you. Because I know, we spend a lot of times in meetings and I think that's really where guys can show you and prove to you that they know what they're talking about and they have something to contribute. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we're practicing currently Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, as you guys well know, and then Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are pretty heavy with lifts and a lot of meetings. I try to conduct meetings. Again, I've been coaching college football for 23 years, and I it's not me just lecturing. I mean, I'm pressing guys all the time. Even when a guy's not taking a rep, I'll ask another guy what his alignment assignment, his visual key. What are the things he's got to do? And so we try to create an edge and a sense of urgency in the meeting that kind of, I think, can reflect upon what it's like on the field a little bit too. And then, I think we do a great job with technology, trying to bounce back and forth with just the video and some odd and the visuals that we have and just kind of bouncing back and forth and just trying to create a stimulus in that meeting room that provides growth and guys are growing and continuing learning. So, at the same time too, I think those meetings, there has to be, there's 10 of us in the meetings. I have 9 players myself. There's also got to be a sense of brotherhood. We're trying to establish that too. I think we have to have connection points that occur outside the meetings and taking the guys to dinner and just trying to find those times too. You played where it's, not always super intense and it's crazy. Like there also has to be some times where you bond a little bit, you just spend a little time. And I'm not in the locker room. I'm not a player. But at the same time, I do value the relationships I have with my players, and it's a coach-athlete relationship. I'm not their friend, I'm not their buddy, I'm not the guy. But it can be a great relationship where I try to mold them, help them grow. And again, I'm a little bit older. I've had a lot of experiences, and I think we take a look at our staff. We have a staff that is a veteran staff with a ton of experience. So we know how to we've had a lot of experience with student athletes in trying to help them grow. And when you have a guy that's maybe struggling. A one-on-one conversation in the office, those type of things. I mean, you just have to navigate all those relationships. And what you're trying to do is get performance. And whether it's a collective meeting, an individual meeting, it's a walkthrough, you're trying to get the players to be their best. I tell them all the time, I kind of work for them. I'm their guy. It's trying to get them to be as good as they can possibly be for the short term for Wisconsin football, because I know winning is a big part of the experience. And you've been in winning locker rooms. It's hard to really replicate that anywhere else. And so I think they'll have a better experience the more games we win. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is put a product on tape at the outside linebacker position that gets us to compete for championships and a standard of play. And so if I can get them to that, then they'll have a great experience. And sometimes those are tough conversations, but they have to happen. It's the truth. And that's the way I always approach things with the players. And I think at the end of the day, great players respect the truth. They don't want to be coddled. They don't want to be patted on the back and told false because they can see through the stuff that's BS. And so I'm very direct and pretty straightforward. I think most great players appreciate that.
Sure. No, I can definitely resonate and identify with that. Getting into coaching myself, I think that's one of the main themes that is tried and true, right? Working for the players, but making sure that the standard is the standard. And there are going to be tough conversations, but to have that overall theme of, hey, we're trying to be the best team here. So you need to pull your weights, that always kind of centers everyone. I'm curious. So, you talked about, you're in Coach Tressel's relationship and caring about that academic piece. And I don't think this gets talked about enough in college football. What is your relationship with academics now that you're at such a prestigious school like Wisconsin? And talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely been one of the transitional pieces, educational pieces for me is the high academics here. I mean, I knew it from the outside. And clearly, you can read about that, but just getting with the players and understanding the expectations that occur academically, and I think that's great. I think that that's like I wouldn't want to coach at a place that had low standards academically, because if we're just a football factory and all we produce is football players, we're not really helping them in regards to getting them prepared for things when they're done with football. So. There's a team of people that help here. We have great academic support. We have meetings on a weekly basis about all of our players in terms of how they're doing. And again, I've got a very disciplined crew, and so we are staying on top of things academically. But it is the message from the head coach on down is that in regards to academic performance, we're not putting that on our academic support staff. They're going to work with the coaching staff. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as coaches to know and how our guys are performing academically and checking in with them. And so that's part of this process of the growth and development is making sure that we're taking care of our business and doing the things we need to do academically, because it's, obviously a goal to try to get an education. I tell players all the time, everybody talks about degrees, not diminishing that, but the degree is what you get at the end of the education. So why don't you just be really focused on that education and that path and the journey and the day-to-day? And if you're really into those details on a day-to-day basis, at the end of it, you'll get a degree. Quit having your focus and talk about degrees, talk about education. And I think the education at Wisconsin occurs not only in the classroom. I think there's things that occur outside the classroom. I'm certainly convinced that there's an education that occurs playing football. And so the total experience in regards to that education can lead to a more well-rounded person when they get done here that will have a degree from this university.
I think that's great. And I think, it's really valuable to hear that from a coach, because I think that kind of gets lost sometimes in the noise of college football. So that's really great. Curious now, one of the last things I always like to ask folks, right, is kind of Mount Rushmore style questions, right? Who in, in all of the places and kids and student athletes that you've coached, who's kind of on your Mount Rushmore? Like who is, and it could be for a variety of reasons.
Sure.
But can you give us four names that you think just really had it either with their attitude, with their style of play, or with their just sheer talent?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with a guy, a fortunate coach that's having a great career now, Matt Judon with the New England Patriots, multiple Pro Bowl player. I recruited him and was his head coach at Grand Valley State. And I've always said this, he was our most talented player, but he was also our hardest working player. And, when I look back upon his career, I think he, really helped us. We had a lot of good teams and he was playing, made it to some semifinals and quarterfinals when he was there playing. Wish it could have gone a little bit farther, especially senior year. We lost the chance to go national championship. But when your most talented player is also your hardest working player, I think that can be huge. And so I'm glad he's having a lot of success. His story was a story of adversity, youngest of 10 kids. Also at Grand Valley tore his ACL. I tell people all the time, I think maybe that's one of the best things that happened because, that really required him to go through a lot of tough stuff on that ACL rehab and made him stronger in a lot of adversity. So that'd be one. There's a guy probably not a lot of people know that's winningest quarterback all time in college football history named Cullen Finnerty. Cullen Finnerty was a quarterback for Grand Valley State for Brian Kelly, and I was an assistant, in the transition from Brian Kelly over to Chuck Martin, and one of the toughest players I've ever been around at that quarterback position, and brought that toughness to him. So definitely, you know, those two guys would resonate. I'm going to throw a couple coaches on there too. Chuck Martin, who I work for, is now the head coach at Miami, Ohio, was an assistant with Brian Kelly for a number of years. Really successful coach. I learned a ton from. I wouldn't be in this position had it not been, you know, for some of his leadership and some of the things that, you know, he ultimately really brought to the table. And then the last guy who I have a really tight relationship with, played in the NFL for like 10 years, was an undrafted free agent, but really made a mark as a special teams player and had a 10-year NFL career as a guy, if you Google, named Dan Skuda, just from Flint, Michigan, about as tough as they get, about as gritty and as a grinder as they ever would be, and got in with the Bengals and lasted 10 years by just grinding the thing and just being not as talented as other people, but number one ability is availability and being tough and just to go. And so I've talked about that. He made a mark, 10-year career in the NFL based on special teams.
Modern day Steve Tasker.
Yeah. And so it was, you know, so it's like, I just value toughness, grit, grind, guys that can fight through adversity, you know, there's qualities. So those guys, all those guys I have on that are people that I've been around that had that.
Yeah, grit and grind. Well, I mean, welcome to the Grit Factory, Coach. You are definitely in the right place. Okay, we're going to get you out of here on this. You've transitioned from being Grand Rapids for a long, long time to being in Madison. What is your favorite part about Madison? What's your favorite place to eat so far?
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. The first 10 weeks I was here, I was in a hotel, and it was 5:30 until the lights went out. And didn't get out a whole lot. I know you've probably heard this from other assistant coaches. The only place I like, this is probably bad. I've been downtown at the Old Fashioned a couple times. So I really
love the Old Fashioned. Everyone loves the Old
Tipsy
Fashioned.
Cow went down there one time, but there was a place we were staying at the Spring Hill Suites down in, I think, Hilldale. There's a place called the Hollander there. And there was a lot of nights where I would just walk to that place, and I thought I had great food. And so I kind of enjoyed going down to the Hollander of that mall a little bit, but I haven't gotten out much. It's bad. It is really bad. I live in Verona now. I bought a house, so I'm down there. And there's a couple places down there. There's a north and south I've been to that was pretty good down there. And not too far from New Glarus. So I got to go down and check out the New Glarus Brewing Company and spend some time down there. And, you know, I do like the Spotted Cow. So we're going to get out and drink some beers this summer.
Well, that sounds like you're in the right place to be, Coach. You're absolutely in the right place to be. This has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We really appreciate you taking some valuable time out of your day to speak with us. Pfaff, I appreciate you pinch hitting for Burn today in behind the scenes. I texted Pfaff at about 7:35, and we're recording this at 8:00. So
awesome.
We really appreciate you. We really appreciate everyone listening and watching on the YouTube page. And so until next time, you've been listening to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. And until next time, on Wisconsin.